That may all be part of it, but it's not the decisive qualities. The decisive qualities of leadership is the ability to have certain conversations of value. And I'm sure on this call, we will recap what those conversations are. They happen in 5 levels of what I call a global leader pyramid. But the important thing is leaders have conversations of value that empower other people to get the job done, to achieve their dreams, their visions, their future. That's the basic definition.
Now, we also, the second is to make an assessment. Can you remind us how to start doing your own assessment?
Yeah, so at the fundamental level of the pyramid, at the base, you have something called self-awareness. Now, that may not sound to you like a conversation, but it's also a conversation that you have with yourself, where you ask yourself, why am I getting impatient right now? Or why do I think I have to do this? You know, why do I think I have to become CEO of the company? Or why do I have to think that I have to go on top of the mountain? To actually be clear about why, about the values, about the interests that you have, but also about the blind spots, right? And the self-assessment is one way to do that, and I hope that people filled it out either before the last call or since the last call, where you basically assess yourself along the 5 levels of the pyramid. But the important thing is to understand that we are all biased, and Daniel Kahneman has proven that, who got the Nobel Prize for economics as the first non-economist, right? He's a psychologist. He got the Nobel Prize for economics for showing that we are suffering from systematic bias. And I'm talking about every human being on the planet is systematically biased. You know, we have confirmation bias where we read something in the newspaper and then we believe it, or maybe our friends told us and then we believe it, and then we only accept the evidence that confirms our prior belief. And we never question again that belief, right? So at this basic level of self-awareness, you train yourself to actually question your own assumptions, to see where am I blind? Where do I just believe something just because everybody says, you know, everybody says you should not trust strangers, or everybody says, you know, when push comes to shove, you're all alone. You know, in America, the fundamental cultural values, I think, are individualism, moralism, which is basically, you know, be politically correct, you know, don't be a racist, and you know, you have to be the shining city on the hill. And then marketism, which is, you know, it's a large market, so I have to be very loud, I have to be very sales oriented, I have to constantly promote myself. And then finally, short-termism, which is, you know, we all believe that everything should happen yesterday or today, or this share has to perform in the stock exchange, otherwise I'm going to sell it. If my wife doesn't work for me, I'm going to divorce her. If my car doesn't work, I'm going to bring it back. You know, so it's this kind of short-term orientation. So these are just 4 examples in the US culture for blind spots or value systems that may systematically bias what we look at, actually. Okay?
I mean, this is very important, at least because you operate from those biases. And that means if you make wrong assessments, whatever you picture give you wrong self-image.
Exactly.
And you cannot operate from wrong hypothesis, because what your actions will follow the path of that wrong assessment. Can we do so? Can we say so?
That is absolutely correct. And that's why this level of self-awareness is at the, or you could call it self-leadership, you could call it self-knowledge. The Greeks said, you know, in the Oracle of Delphi, right? There was the ark where people walked through to get the oracle. And when you walk through that ark, it was written on the ark, nos kisauton. Nos kisauton is Greek for know thyself. You have to know yourself. And even General Pershing in the First World War said that a man who is not, and I think he meant also a woman, who is not fit to command him or herself is not fit to command others, right? So if you want to lead other people, you have to start with yourself. You have to look at your own integrity, look at your own authenticity, look at your own honesty, look at your own values, and see, is this instrument that I want to use to lead something, right? Is this instrument clean? Am I ready to lead? Or do I have to adjust certain things before I know where I want to lead?
That is amazing. That is amazing. Now, the next step, we would like to have a couple of our guests, but if you are following, you are also a guest. If you are watching at this moment, this recording, there is no leadership without action. They said if you have 3 birds on a tree and they decide to fly, they take a decision, but there are still 3 birds on the tree because they need to fly. They have to just do it. Now,
right.
The next step is, you know, that you are in a continuing growing, which is leadership. You know, you do your self-assessment and you develop yourself to see what are your strengths. Now you need to act on specific projects. We would like to for you who is following this recording to see exactly what kind of action that you have to put. That might be whatever it is, but what kind of action that Thomas will be next in that leadership endeavor.
Yes, before I answer that question and go into the action, I just want to recap also.
Oh yes.
You know, the pyramid, because we only discussed the one at the bottom, right? The self-knowledge.
Yes.
Just very briefly, so people can recap that for themselves. You obviously then have to build the relationship where you build trust, you build alliances, you build shared values with other people. Once you're clear on your values and your interests, you can look at what do other people have as their interests. Then you go to the vision level where you build a common future. You actually create a future and you ask yourself, where do I want to be? Or more precisely, where do we want to be in 5 years from today, for example? Or where do I want to be at the end of my life? Those are all conversations for vision. Then you go to the strategy level where you look at how can we get there? How much is it going to cost? What's missing? What are the barriers that we need to transcend? And then you can go, as you said, Roosevelt, to the action level, where you basically ask when, you know, when can you do this for me? You make requests and you make promises. And I just want to remind ourselves, I said it in the beginning, number one, these are all conversations. There is not a thing called relationship. Relationship does not happen simply by drinking a lot of beer with somebody or drinking, what do people drink in Haiti? I guess wine or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, any alcohol. People think that that builds relationships, but you go back to the office the next morning and you're hungover, but you don't have a relationship, right? So
you have
relationship is, I'm sorry?
You have headaches.
You have a headache, exactly. That's right. So you're more related to your head, but you're less related to other people. So what builds relationship is a conversation for relationship, right? What builds vision is a conversation for what do you want to be when you grow up, or what do you want to be in 5 years? What builds strategy is a conversation for feasibility, for doability. And what builds action is also a conversation, okay? Action does not happen by itself. It happens when I commit myself, when I make a promise, and I say, I will run a marathon, for example, or I will be CEO, or I will have $1 million in sales this year. Or as our colleague Farah said on the last call, I will get up at 5 a.m. every morning, right? That's a commitment, that's an action. It doesn't yet mean, like you said, that the accomplishment does not come out automatically when you make a promise. You still have to actually take the action after that. So I just wanted to recap that. Those are the 5 fundamental conversations.
I think you nail it on the head. That means, first of all, you have your self-assessment, and you need to build trust. And also you need to have relationships, trust. And those relationships, you do not build them in a day, you build them daily, which is also leadership. You do not build leadership in a day. They do not give you a vaccine and you become a leader. This is something that you build daily in the trenches. And action as well, what I understand from what you said, Thomas, is that you need to have first a conversation with yourself, then a conversation with others about a specific goal. How do you conduct those conversations?
I think the most important thing is that I ask questions. You know, we're so good at giving answers, and we always think, especially men, by the way, men always think we have to fix it. You know, my wife tells me a problem and I say, oh, that's no problem. You just call the doctor. I give her advice, or I tell her the solution. What she wants is actually to be heard, right? So asking questions and listening is probably more important than the answers that you give. For example, when I ask somebody, what do you want? And I really shut up and I listen for what they say. You know, at first they'll say, I want to eat a lot of chocolate, or I want to drive a Jaguar, you know, or I want to make $1 million or whatever. And then I say, okay, great. And what do you want? You know, and then eventually they come to really big visions. And it's not because of me saying something. I really shut up. I really try to not talk. You know, on this webinar, you see me talking a lot, but I usually, as a coach and as a consultant, I really shut up. And I've noticed that I sell more when I listen, and I get more intelligence when I listen, and I get deeper relationships when I listen, and I get really the access to the future, because people often solve their own problems when they're heard, when they're listened to. So I think you asked me how I go about having these conversations.
Yes, my question was, yes, how do you conduct conversations? And your response starts with active listening. Develop your listening muscle. And you mentioned you do not have an answer. Sometimes people ask you questions, but they want to be heard. They are not looking for solutions. They may have their own solution. They want to validate what they are asking and to have someone to run their ideas by. That does not mean that they want you to tell them. And I can see that in several of my friends. Sometimes they ask me questions, but they just want to talk, and they need a couple of ears to listen to them. And, and what I get from what you said is that listening is very important. Even in selling, you will sell more by private listening instead of haranguing and talking and speaking all the time. Is that what you mean?
That's exactly right. You know, I will never forget one of the biggest contracts I ever sold was at a very large global bank. And this was when I was still in New York. And I walked in and I had never met these people, right? So we started talking and I basically asked them a question. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And then they told me stuff. And then I said, okay, great. What's missing for that now? And then they told me more stuff. And I literally just took notes, and they literally dictated the contract to me, you know? All I had to do afterwards was type it up and put a price tag in it, and they accepted it, and it was done. it was all done by me asking some good questions and then shutting up and listening.
Asking questions is an art, because
Yes.
sometimes you helping the person to discover himself through the conversation. And there are several questions, open-ended questions, short answers questions, and sometimes some clarifying questions. And the more you can help with questions, you lead with questions.
Yes, that's
And by
exactly right.
leading, this is not leading towards your own goal. This is clarifying for that person, like a pilot, to have a crystal clear sky to dive and to go. And that
Yeah.
is done through conversation.
Yes, exactly. And what I would say is avoid rhetorical questions like, don't you think you should go to the doctor? Or don't you think this would be great? Because that only poses as a question. It's not really a question, right? So what you want to do is ask the so-called W questions. Who, what, when, how, that has a W at the end. What else is there? Why?
Yes,
Those are
the
those
basic
are the W
questions
questions,
to
exactly.
report a story. So
And
this
by the
is,
way, just to add again the globally the pyramid, right? At the self-awareness level, at the basic level, we ask why. At the relationship level, we ask who. Who am I? Who are you? Who are we? At the vision level, we ask what. What do you want to be? What do you want? At the strategy level, we ask how. And at the action level, we ask when, right? So just to bring that back, those are the W questions.
I think this deserves to be repeated, because those are exactly how, at the strategic level, that we will proceed. You need to understand exactly, when you have pen and papers, you have the global pyramid of leadership. You need to know exactly what kind of question to ask at several steps, at several moments of your growing. And you say that at the bottom, you ask why. And why
Yeah.
is the dream, is the bigger vision, is why is that? Why am I doing this?
Exactly. Why is it? What does it mean to me? Why is another way of saying, what's your value system? So, for example, when somebody says, well, I was really angry that the person was late for the meeting, okay, and he keeps coming late. Then I would say, okay, why does that matter to you? And then he would say, well, it's just respectful to be on time, and it's more efficient to be on time. And so he has already shown me his value system, right? It's a very simple example.
Relationship is who? Who am I and who I am putting this together with?
Yes.
And after that, we have
What, which is the vision.
Let's recap it again, because I'm trying to remember all of them. And for you, you can go to the book. I think it's, what page is it in the book?
Let's see, it's on page 13. I'm sorry, page 15 in the book.
Page 15,
Page
right
15 in the book.
here.
Right.
Yes, leadership
Okay.
in 100 days.
I
So
noticed that the
now,
book is upside down, but
I see, as a matter of fact, yes, it is. Yeah, I can read it quite well. I can read it quite well.
oh, I'm
Leadership
glad.
in
I'm glad.
100 days. And I am speaking with Thomas Weifel, and he is a leadership in coach. He has several books. One of them is Leadership in 100 Days. And this is the book that we have been discussing for the last 3 sessions. And today, our main goal is to see how can you move from your intent of growing into leadership. And second, after you've done your own assessment, asking yourself questions. And now you know the relationships that you have to build through conversations. And now you have to aim and shoot. Aim
Yes,
and go.
correct. And that is the famous catalytic project, I assume. Is that where you want to go?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. I love catalytic projects. Because as you said, you know, my metaphor, you talked about the three birds on the tree. My metaphor is the Italian opera, right? In the Italian opera, people are singing, "We have to go to war, we have to go to war." And they sing for 4 hours about going to war, but they don't actually go to war. Right? So that's, that's my, and I'm not, I hope I'm not insulting the Italians here.
The Ethiopians would like to see that opera when Mussolini invaded them.
Yeah, exactly. Abyssinia, right? Oy, oy, oy. Oy, oy, oy. That's right. So on day 2 of the book, it's about the catalytic project. And just to give you the definition or what we mean by this, let's assume that you've done the work and you've created a future that you want in the next 5 years, right? And hopefully it's a very clear future. And on day 27, you wrote an article where you actually wrote an article about yourself in the third person 5 years from today, right? So it's now today's date, 5 years from today. And what have you accomplished? And what did you produce in terms of measurable outcomes? What was unique about your strategy? How did you add value to people that made it worthwhile for them, right? What do people say around you, your colleagues, your customers, your suppliers, your friends, your family members, maybe also VIPs of your country or VIPs in the world? What do they say about you as a leader in 5 years from today? And this newspaper article would be written in one of your favorite publications. For me, this would be the Spiegel magazine in Germany, or it could be the New York Times, or it could be the, you know, what do you have in Florida?
We have the Miami Herald.
Exactly, the Miami Herald. Okay, 5 years from today, what would be written about you if a journalist wrote up a story and you were wildly successful, right? So that's basically the idea. Let's assume you've done that. Even if not, you could do it now. And then based on that future, not based on the past, not based on what was yesterday, not based on wanting to fix something, but from the future, how would you live in the next 100 days that would be consistent with calling forth that future? Or another way of saying it is, in a microcosm, how could you live already now the 5-year future that you want to eventually build, okay? And this comes from a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi said that, I think he said, I'm always careful with quotes, but I think he said, be today the future that you wish for in the world, or be the change that you want the world to make, right?
So you need to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Exactly, exactly. Be the future that you want to see, or be the change that you want to see in the world.
Amazing.
And basically, I just took that and said, okay, that's the essence of a catalytic project. So for example, if I want to build a company, you know, I'm tired of working as an employee and I want to build my own company. If that's my vision in 5 years, I could, for example, in these 100 days, I could say, I'm going to get my first client, or I could say, I'm going to build my first prototype for the product, you know, and I will test the prototype, maybe in a small market, maybe in one village or in one city, just to see how it works, right? But the essence is, as you said, Roosevelt, is action. It's not theoretical planning. It's not research. It's not just going to the lawyers and you know, asking for incorporation documents or whatever. It's really to be the future now, right? So if you want to build a restaurant, for example, if that's your dream, then you would actually, even in the 100 days, you would already maybe invite people to your house and pretend it's a restaurant for an evening, right? So you can, even without having the structure, you can already produce the results in 100 days that will show you whether your future whether your strategy is actually valid, whether it is something that you want to pursue. So it's kind of like a laboratory of action. And in that laboratory, you test your strategy and you see, yeah, this actually could work. You know, I could do this. I did it on a small scale, and now I can scale it up for the next 5 years.
Now, what I see is that you start making it happen in your mind. You visualize the result that you have, but you do more. You put it in writing, where in the present tense, where you can read it as it has already happened, and you will live your life in congruence with what you have set as a goal for the upcoming 5 years, 100 days. So not only you will be having a specific goal, but you also picture the result. This is, you start with the end in mind, and your actions, your day-to-day actions will be in sync. Because if I want to play soccer and I'm not training in the field, I'm not playing really with the ball, that means, yes, I have a goal, but this is like a fantasy, because I'm not acting in the right way, in the right situation that I want to see results, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you said several things, and I just want to underline each of them. So number one, you spoke about the difference it makes to actually write stuff down, okay? And that goes for both the 5-year vision article. I'm a big believer in actually writing it down, because it becomes more real. It becomes more outside of my brain, right? If I only say, oh yeah, you know, I would love to run a marathon, it's very different from when I write it down on a paper and I show the paper to people and I declare it to the world. And the social networks are a great place to actually make declarations like this. I'm sorry, why is this?
Why writing is so important?
Well, for me, I can only say for me, because I mean, there has been some scientific study of the learning that happens when you write stuff down. I mean, when you hear something, you learn it to a certain degree. When you say it yourself, you learn it to another degree. And when you write it down, then it's almost like it exists independent of yourself. It's like the word project, right? In French, projet means to project something, to throw it forward so that it can live a life that is independent of yourself. That's the etymology of the word project, right? I'm projecting something. I'm throwing it forward, yeah, projeter, so that it can live independent of me. And obviously, I then still have to empower it. I have to move it. But once it lives independent of me, it's like I've given birth, right? So writing it down is very important. Number two, it's still conversations. Even when I take an action, the action consists also of having conversations, right? So, for example, if I want to build a restaurant, I now have to have conversations with potential cooks or with waiters or waitresses, etc. I have to put together the menu. So it means I have to write down. So even in the catalytic project, you have to follow the questionnaire, which is all these questions here, right? Where you ask yourself, you know, who's the target group? What are my specific measurable goals in the next 100 days? What's missing that this project should provide? What part of my 5-year vision is this project designed to accomplish? What requests do I have of other people? What are my milestones? And then at the very end, what could go wrong? Do you see, these are also a lot of W questions. The question, what could go wrong, is probably the most important one, because it will allow me to be kind of negative and pessimistic and say, in the worst case, how can I prevent the worst case from happening so that this project can actually succeed?
So this is a whole process, but it happens quick. as well. So this is not
Yeah.
a process that you will be spending weeks. No, you
No.
need to act at the moment because you have been the thinking prior. You have been
Yes.
doing the planning, you have been doing your own assessment, and this is not a moment of doubt. That
Yes.
means I am thinking if I do that now, because your mind can play you game if you do not have that specific intent of acting.
Yes. Absolutely right. Uh, you know, I do this obviously with my clients and my students as well. And usually my clients, I give them about 20 minutes to fill out the entire catalytic project design sheet. It's about 11 questions. And I always tell them, don't get it perfect. You know, perfection, somebody just said that recently also about the coronavirus. You know, a senior official at the World Health Organization said perfection is the enemy of health. Because if you wait until you get it perfect, you're going to die. So you need to be able to put stuff down quickly. It needs to be about 80% correct. You know, it doesn't have to be 100%. Just put some stuff down and then move, take an action. And then you will see, I call it strategy in action, right? So you basically take an action, you see, that was not quite perfect. Okay, great. So I'm going to try again. Maybe I have to adjust my strategy, and then I take another action, and then I adjust the strategy. It's strategy, action, strategy, action. I don't believe in kind of a theoretical planning anymore. It's not, it's a waste of time because the
Yeah,
world is changing so
and
fast, you know?
also you cannot steer a car which is standing still.
Yes, actually you can, but it's not going to help a lot,
Yes,
right?
but most of the time you still at the same place, and the
Yes,
more you stand still, the more the tires get flat, and the more you can move the car. That
that's a great
means
metaphor.
that yes, that means you need to keep moving, and if you need to make a U-turn or if you need to make a left or a right, but at least you're doing something.
Yes,
And I've
very
seen
good
that
point.
in my Haitian culture. Most of the time people have meetings, they meet on the
Mhm,
meeting, they prepare the meeting
mhm,
after the meeting,
mhm.
and that could be a couple of weeks of work. And after that, much has been said, then done.
Yes, absolutely right. You know, the American baseball player, Yogi Berra, I don't know if you remember him.
Yes.
An amazing player in the 20th century. And he said, even if you have the right strategy, or even if you're on the right track, if you just sit there, you're going to be run over.
Mm.
So
That means don't stay on the tracks because the next train is coming.
that's correct. Don't sit still. Just produce an outcome. But seriously, that's why it's so important to actually set the goals of the 100 days and say those goals have to be so-called SMART goals, right? SMART means specific, measurable. Um, what's what's the A part?
Action. You mean
Yeah, maybe
smart?
action oriented. Yeah, SMART goals.
Smart goal, you need to be specific,
Yeah,
measurable,
yeah.
and
A, A, I think is accountable, maybe. I'm not sure.
actionable,
Or achievable, or
achievable, yeah.
actionable, right? Yeah. And then
And
R stands for
R will be T,
relevant,
I
I
know
think.
it's
I
time.
think relevant, and T, I forgot. T is time bound. T is, it
Yes.
has to have a deadline.
That means you need to, not I need to do this
Yes,
by tomorrow, by this week, by next week, in 5
yes.
years. Because if not, it's too open, it's too wide. And
That's what Oscar Peterson said. Without a deadline, baby, I wouldn't do nothing.
the more time you have, the more time you lose, the more time you know that I can procrastinate.
That's
Yeah,
a good point.
mañana.
That's a good point.
Now,
Yes,
now the whole goal is that you have a project, and that project is a catalytic project that you want. That means a project very important. This is not,
yes,
this is something that will change you, that will require you to become that leader you are called to be. Now,
Exactly.
now you have done the project, you are successful. Are you done with leadership?
No, as we said in the beginning of the call, right? You have never gotten to the peak of the mountain, right? So my my principle in life is that I'm complete while completing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm complete every day. I wake up, I look at my wife next to me in the bed. I say, my life is good, thank God, you know. So in that sense, I'm complete, but I'm not done yet. I'm constantly working to complete more. And as long as the world is in the shape it's in right now, I think there's a lot more to do, right?
And
So
there are always something new to do. And they say that if you think you have arrived, you have arrived.
that's right.
So that means if there is no more mountain to conquer, if there is no projects to do, that means now you will sit and eat bonbon and then kumbaya. And 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 when you do that, now what we say life does not have that meaning. And when you don't have
Yes,
meaning, that sense of belonging, that sense of conquering, do not you do not get it inside
yes,
to develop yourself, and this is where you start dying, because there is you do not die physically, but you die into your quest of achieving. Then
yeah,
will death happens because of you sitting in
yes,
one place doing nothing. You were created to do something.
yes. You know, this reminds me, I had the privilege to meet the late Prime Minister Shimon Peres of Israel. Uh, and he was already 92 years old. And my friend asked him, you know, Shimon Peres, you're now 92 years old. Do you think you're old or not? And he said, you know, as long as I talk more about what I've done than what I will do, I'm old. But as long as I talk more about what I have yet to do than what I've already done, I'm still young. So I think I'm still young. And he said that at
Wow.
92 years old, you know? And for me,
And
that's the key. As long as I still have a future in front of me to live for and to create something, I'm still alive. Like you said, I'm not dead yet. I'm not old yet, right?
and that reminds me the very first book that the very first comment that you had shortly after the coronavirus. And this is that comment that I I commented on your comment that linked us together in search of meaning. And
Ah,
and
right.
what he said at that moment while he was in a concentration camp is that I had a deep sense of meaning, because logotherapy is an opportunity for me to bring something to the world.
Yes,
And
absolutely
sometimes
right.
when you have something that you anticipate to do something, whatever issues, obstacles that happen to your path, you can a wall, you can escalate it, or you walk through it. You do what you need to do because there is something behind that wall that you want to achieve. And that's why I
Beautiful.
understand from what you said, Thomas, it's very important to always move from one project to another project. Always project yourself toward the
Yes,
future. Have
exactly.
project.
And you know, you also just gave the essence. I mean, that's a beautiful example. Viktor Frankl, I would strongly recommend his book, In Search of Meaning. Uh, and that's exactly the reason why I showed you to build this article, right? To build the 5-year vision article, because that article gives you that kind of bigger context to live for. Because our purpose as human beings is not simply to survive. You know, we were put in this world for a specific purpose, and One job in life is to find out what that is, right? What is my life purpose? Why was I put on this planet to create something that has never existed before? I think I gave the example of the Rabbi Zusha. Did I say this last time? I think Rabbi Zusha was asked. No, he said, in the world to come, I shall not be asked, why were you not Moses? Why were you not Abraham? I shall be asked, why were you not Zusha? Exactly. So, you know, what is the purpose of Roosevelt on this planet? What's the purpose of Thomas in this life? And to always remember that, to never get lost in the emails or the, you know, the details of everyday life. And I know it's hard, you know, it's sometimes very, very hard.
And because we are in the action part of our quest of understanding leadership, there was a survey and they interviewed the dying in that book, Death and Dying. And most of the old people say that this is the action that they didn't take. Yes. That their most regrets are the action that they didn't take. It's not about what they did wrong. It's not about what they did well, but was mostly about what thought they had, they didn't act upon. Yeah. And now they are looking at the past with no power to do those things. And I totally agree with you. That means what is in your mind today? I'm asking you following this recording. What is in your mind today that you have been procrastinating and so far? And the only way you can know if you will be successful or be a failure is by acting.
Yes, and I would even say that the only failure is not to act. So in other words, if you take action, you will not fail. You might have a new learning, right? I mean, even Google is one of the most successful companies on the planet. Google had ventures that completely failed, but they don't see it as a failure. They see it as a learning opportunity. For example, I think they launched about.com, or I forgot what it was called. They invested for 4 years. And now there's no about.com, right? It doesn't exist. But when you ask them, they don't say, oh, that was a failed project. They say, we learned valid things. We learned a lot of good intelligence from this project that we can now use for other things. So I don't believe that failure really exists. The only thing that exists, or the only failure that exists, is, as you said, is not to take the action that you have in your mind.
Yes.
And by the way, if I may, I'm going to just tell a quick story about Mahatma Gandhi, which I think is about action. There was a woman who traveled with her 8-year-old son to Mahatma Gandhi's ashram, right? So it took her several days. She went with the bus, and then the rickshaw, and then the train, and then again the rickshaw, and she finally made it to his ashram. And the Mahatma Gandhi says hi and bows down to the 8-year-old boy and says, what do you want? And the boy says nothing, and the mother says, tell him, Mahatma, to stop eating sugar. Okay, so Gandhi says, okay, come back in 2 weeks. The woman is a little bit puzzled, but you know, it's the Mahatma Gandhi, so okay, fine, I'm going to go all the way back to my village. She goes all the way back with her 8-year-old son, and 2 weeks later she comes all the way again with the bus, the rickshaw, the train, the rickshaw again, and finally she stands again in front of Mahatma Gandhi, and Mahatma Gandhi asks again, what do you want? And the woman says, okay, now tell my son to stop eating sugar. And Gandhi bows down to the boy and says, stop eating sugar. And the mother loses it. She goes, Mahatma Gandhi, I know you're this amazing, transformed kind of guy and enlightened, but why in the world did you not tell my son 2 weeks ago? You could have saved me all this trip, right? And Mahatma Gandhi says, 2 weeks ago, I was eating sugar.
What I get from this, if he were eating sugar himself, how could he dare ask someone else to do it at that moment?
Correct.
That is a great story.
And that to me is the essence of leadership. It's what you said, you know, about taking the action. It's one thing to think, I am this guy, and you know, I want to be a hero, or I want to make a difference in the world, or I want to build a company, or I want to build a family, or I want to write a book, or whatever you want to do, you know. But to actually do it, that is the integrity. And that gives you more power than all the money that you could have, or all the titles, or the authority, or to have, you know, the corner office in your building. All of these are just external things. How many Facebook friends you have, or how many followers on LinkedIn, what matters, what gives you a power that nobody can take away from you is your integrity. And integrity is very simply defined as a congruence between what you say and what you do. In other words, honoring your word, right? If you say something, if Farah says, I'm getting up at 5 in the morning, do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. You know, maybe Nike really got it down to the essence. Yeah.
We are at the end of this conversation. We want to thank you, Thomas, but before we depart, how can I add value to your work? I know I'm asking those following us to have the book, but more than that, how could, let's say, I'm living in Haiti, I am in the US, I am an individual, and I would like to receive your coaching, to receive your service. How can I get into contact with you, and how to add value to your work and what you do?
Thank you. Well, you know, this is the work that I do. So if I've made any difference in this conversation with you, Roosevelt, for those of you who are listening or watching this, then it would be that you go out and you accomplish something that is greater than yourself, that you did not dream possible, and that with the tools that I've been privileged to come up with, not alone, obviously. I had a lot of great teachers along the way. I had amazing coaches along the way. Nothing that I've built is really just me alone, okay? I'm just not that brilliant. But I did come up with the stuff. So if people can use those tools to achieve the life that they love and that they dream of, then that is my work, okay? Having said that, I think what we could do is after this call, or just below the video, maybe we could post a link where I offer a series of videos where you can transcend certain blockages that may keep you from expressing the leadership or achieving what you want, right? It could be that you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed with things to do. It could be that there's resistance in your company against your ideas, and you don't quite know how to build the trust with other people. Or it could be that you constantly get bogged down by little details in your life, or by, you know, survival issues, financial survival, for example. And I've developed a process that of 4 videos that actually allows you to schedule, and it's very Swiss. It's very schedule oriented, very, very specific and concrete. How you can actually schedule the fulfillment of your life in your calendar. So what I propose is that we simply post that link below the video, and that people should feel welcome to watch that. It's a series of videos, and then it goes into other things. And obviously, if you want to connect to me on LinkedIn as well, that's my favorite platform. Please connect to me. My name is Thomas Zweifel on LinkedIn. By the way, Zweifel means doubt. So, you know, even if you doubt, you can be a leader. Surprisingly, you know, my name is not Safe. My name is not sure of himself or Mr. Confidence. My name is Thomas Doubt. Thomas
By the
Zweifel.
way, Thomas means doubt as well.
Yes, and maybe that saved me. Maybe the minus and minus is plus.
Oh,
like
minus by minus are positive.
Plus.
Anyway, I want to thank you for your time. This book is a great book, Leadership in 100 Days. But besides that, Thomas has been coach for several 500 companies, and his very first company, Swiss Consulting Group, has
Right.
been named a Fast company by Fast magazine. And Thomas has several books, including Strategic in Action and Communication or Die. And this is a very good book. And this book right here, Leadership in 100 Days. So Thomas, thank you, and see you next.
Thank you so much, Roosevelt, and thank you for the work that you're doing. You're an inspiration. Go forth and multiply.
Yes, sir. Okay, now I stop it. I stop